Late afternoon sunlight streamed through the soaring glass dome of Oceanview Paradise Resort, where bursts of laughter mingled with the soft clink of ice in cocktails and the lazy drift of jazz. By the VIP pool, the water shimmered like emerald, and guests lay with eyes closed, basking in the flawless service, minds occupied with nothing more than evenly bronzed skin. But when the soft slap of rubber sandals touched the sun-warmed stone, Naomi Chen appeared. Wrapped in a pristine, minimalist white robe, sunglasses veiling half her face, walking with the kind of calm that suggested nothing mattered and no one here mattered enough to stop her. Her brown skin glistened under the sun. At the head of the lounger row, Victoria Sterling glanced up from her clipboard, eyes flicking and halting as if she'd spotted a stain on silk bedding. The polite smile on her lips faltered, not out of surprise, but like a control instinct brushing against something that didn't compute. A beat of silence rippled through the air. Sound seemed to retract. Something subtle but certain had slipped out of orbit. Behind her, Jake Morrison stood sentinel, a silent soldier in a perfectly pressed security uniform, every crease razor-sharp, sharp enough to slice glass. His hand never strayed far from the radio clipped at his belt, and his eyes swept the pool deck in constant motion, ever alert for threats to the fragile order Victoria had so meticulously engineered. She moves toward an empty chair with the same unhurried pace she's maintained since entering the resort, her dark skin glistening slightly in the warm afternoon sun. Victoria's attention snaps to Naomi immediately, her trained eye taking in every detail with the precision of a detective examining a crime scene. The absence of designer accessories, the lack of expensive jewelry, the simple clothing that could have come from any department store, every element feeds into Victoria's mental checklist that she's perfected over 8 years of managing this exclusive retreat. Her smile begins to form before she even starts moving, a expression perfectly calibrated through thousands of interactions with guests she deemed worthy, and those she considered beneath the resort's standard. The other guests scattered around the pool area represent exactly what Victoria expects to see in her domain. Predominantly white faces bronzing under the Caribbean sun, obviously wealthy individuals wearing swimwear that costs more than most people's monthly rent, conversations punctuated by casual references to private jets and summer homes in the Hamptons. A middle-aged couple laughs loudly as they slip into the crystalline water without a care in the world, their entry unmarked by any staff intervention or requests for identification. "Excuse me," Victoria's voice carries across the deck with practiced authority, each word enunciated with the perfect blend of professionalism and barely concealed condescension that she's developed through years of dealing with what she considers undesirable elements. Her heels click against the stone with military precision as she approaches Naomi, her posture ramrod straight and her expression friendly yet unmistakably cold. Naomi looks up from arranging her simple terry cloth towel on a nearby chair, her expression remaining pleasantly neutral despite the pointed nature of the interruption. Her movements are unhurried and deliberate, suggesting a confidence that Victoria finds both surprising and mildly irritating. Around them, other guests continue their conversations and poolside activities in blissful ignorance, their privilege so complete that they cannot even recognize when it's being exercised in their presence. "This area is reserved for VIP members only," Victoria continues, her voice rising just enough to ensure that nearby guests can hear the interaction. "Do you have your membership card with you?" The question hangs in the air like an accusation, delivered with the kind of false courtesy that makes the underlying hostility even more apparent. Naomi's eyebrows raise slightly, creating the first small crack in her composed demeanor, but her voice remains steady and controlled. "Of course I do." She reaches into her beach bag with deliberate calm, her movements suggesting someone who has navigated similar challenges before and learned to respond with patience rather than anger. The sleek black card she produces gleams in the sunlight like obsidian as she extends it toward Victoria, who accepts it with the kind of theatrical reluctance typically reserved for handling evidence of a crime. The plastic feels expensive and substantial in Victoria's hands, but she examines it with exaggerated scrutiny anyway, turning it over multiple times, as if searching for some obvious flaw that would justify her suspicions. "This card," Victoria begins, her voice trailing off as she continues her performance of concern. Her eyebrows furrow in an expression of professional worry that she's clearly rehearsed in front of mirrors. "It doesn't look quite right. The format seems unusual compared to our standard membership cards. I'll need to verify this with our computer system before I can allow you access to this area." The words settle over the pool deck like a toxic cloud, transforming what should have been a simple interaction into something far more sinister. Naomi's eyebrows rise another fraction of an inch, but her voice maintains its steady tone. "I've been staying in the penthouse suite since yesterday evening. Everything was arranged through your reservations department, and I specifically requested VIP pool access as part of my accommodation package." "I understand that's what you believe," Victoria replies, her tone suggesting that Naomi's beliefs might be fundamentally misguided or based on some kind of misunderstanding. "But we've had significant issues recently with counterfeit membership cards circulating in the area, high-quality forgeries that are very difficult to detect without proper verification. I'm sure you understand our need for thorough security measures." Around them, the atmosphere begins to shift in subtle but unmistakable ways. Conversations grow quieter as other guests start to notice the developing interaction, their attention drawn by Victoria's deliberately raised voice and the unusual sight of a staff member questioning a guest's credentials so publicly. Some watch with the uncomfortable fascination of people witnessing a traffic accident, while others deliberately look away, unwilling to acknowledge what they're seeing unfold in their carefully protected paradise. Victoria's voice rises just enough to ensure her next words carry to the nearby loungers. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in our public pool area on the other side of the resort. It's quite nice, and there's absolutely no membership requirement or verification process needed there." The suggestion drips with false helpfulness, each word carefully chosen to maximize both the insult and the public nature of the rejection. Naomi settles into her chair with deliberate calm, her book opening in her lap, though her eyes focus on something far beyond the printed pages. The weight of the moment presses against her, but she responds with the kind of dignity that can only come from someone who has faced such challenges before and emerged stronger. Naomi's gaze drifts across the sparkling water toward the horizon, but her mind travels much further back in time. The weight of countless similar moments presses against her memory like stones in a backpack she's carried for decades. Each instance of doubt and dismissal adding another layer to the armor she's been forced to develop simply to navigate through the world. She remembers being 15 years old, standing outside the prestigious Willowbrook Country Club, where her academic scholarship had earned her a coveted summer job in the pro shop. The security guard had questioned her right to enter through the front door, insisting she must be looking for the service entrance, despite the official employment letter clutched in her trembling teenage hands. The humiliation had burned like acid, but it had also planted the first seeds of determination that would eventually grow into an empire. Years later, she recalls her first major business presentation, standing before a room full of resort industry executives to deliver groundbreaking hospitality design concepts that would revolutionize the guest experience. Instead of listening to her innovative ideas about creating inclusive luxury environments, the executives had spent the first 20 minutes questioning her credentials, demanding to see her business school transcripts, and expressing surprise that someone so young and so obviously different from their usual consultants could have developed such sophisticated proposals. Every challenge had been a stepping stone, every doubt a fuel that drove her to build something better, something that would change the very systems that sought to exclude people like her. The irony wasn't lost on her that she now owned the type of establishment that had once treated her as an unwelcome intruder. The sound of approaching footsteps draws Naomi back to the present moment. Emma Rodriguez moves cautiously toward her position, the young woman's crisp resort uniform a stark contrast to the anxiety written clearly across her face. Emma's name tag identifies her as front desk staff, but her expression suggests someone wrestling with competing loyalties between job security and basic human decency. Emma glances nervously over her shoulder toward Victoria, who continues her theatrical phone conversation with security before crouching down beside Naomi's chair. Her voice drops to barely above a whisper, as if she's sharing state secrets rather than basic information about resort policies. "I'm so incredibly sorry about what just happened," Emma says, her words tumbling together in a rush of guilt and frustration that threatens to overwhelm her professional composure. "Ms. Sterling, she does this sometimes, with certain guests." Emma's eyes dart around the pool area like a trapped animal before focusing back on Naomi with obvious distress. Naomi closes her book and studies Emma's face, recognizing something genuine in the young woman's internal struggle. Despite the uncomfortable situation, she finds herself curious about this employee who seems willing to risk her position to offer comfort to a stranger. "What's your name?" Naomi asks, her voice gentle enough to encourage honesty. "Emma Rodriguez. I work at the front desk, and I personally processed your reservation myself yesterday afternoon." Emma's voice carries the weight of someone who has watched injustice unfold too many times without having the power to intervene. Your penthouse suite reservation, your VIP access privileges, your spa appointments. Everything was perfectly legitimate and properly documented in our system. Across the pool area, Victoria continues her performance for the gathered audience, speaking loudly into her phone with the kind of dramatic flair typically reserved for soap opera villains. "Yes. I need someone from security to verify a membership issue immediately. We have a developing situation that requires urgent attention and possibly additional personnel." Jake Morrison shifts his position to create a more intimidating presence, positioning himself strategically between Naomi and the pool entrance like a human barrier. His hand rests casually on his radio, ready to summon reinforcements at Victoria's signal, while his eyes scan the crowd for potential supporters or threats to their carefully orchestrated display of authority. The other guests begin to sense the escalating tension like animals detecting an approaching storm. Some gather their belongings to move away from the developing drama, unwilling to be associated with whatever unpleasantness might unfold, while others remain glued to their positions, transfixed by the rare spectacle of conflict in their usually serene paradise. "Has this happened before?" Naomi asks Emma quietly, though the resigned expression on the young woman's face already suggests the answer. Emma nods reluctantly, her voice dropping even lower. "More than it should, and always with guests who look like you or speak with accents or dress differently than what Ms. Sterling considers appropriate for the VIP areas." She pauses, struggling with the implications of what she's revealing. "But most people usually just leave rather than cause a scene." Ms. Sterling says she's protecting the resort's reputation and maintaining our exclusivity standards, but Emma trails off, unable to finish the sentence that would acknowledge the obvious discrimination she's been forced to witness and enable through her silence. The guilt in her expression speaks volumes about the moral compromises she's made to keep her job in an economy where stable employment feels like a luxury she can't afford to lose. Naomi surveys the scene with the analytical mind that built her business empire from nothing more than determination and a vision of hospitality that treated all guests with equal dignity. She notices which guests are watching with sympathy, which ones seem uncomfortable with the developing situation, and which ones appear to approve of Victoria's aggressive tactics. The dynamics of power and prejudice play out in real time before her, a case study in systemic bias that she's witnessed from both sides of the equation. "You don't have to stay here and endure this," Emma whispers urgently, her voice filled with genuine concern for Naomi's well-being. "I could arrange for you to use our spa facilities instead, or I could transfer your reservation to our sister property down the coast. Somewhere you won't have to deal with this kind of treatment." Naomi's lips curve into the faintest suggestion of a smile, an expression that suggests she knows something the others don't, a quiet confidence that this story is far from reaching its conclusion. "Thank you for your kindness, Emma, but I think I'll stay right here and see how this situation develops." Her voice carries an undertone of anticipation that makes Emma wonder if there's more to this seemingly ordinary guest than meets the eye. Victoria returns from her theatrical phone call with renewed purpose and barely concealed satisfaction, Jake Morrison flanking her like a trained attack dog responding to his master's whistle. Her expression combines professional concern with the kind of righteous indignation that comes from someone who believes she successfully identified a genuine threat to the carefully maintained order of her domain. "I've spoken extensively with our security department," Victoria announces loudly enough for everyone within a 50-foot radius to hear with crystal clarity. Her voice carries the authoritative tone of someone delivering official pronouncements that will reshape the immediate future. "Your membership card has been flagged for several irregularities that require immediate investigation and resolution." Naomi remains seated in her chair, her posture relaxed despite the obvious escalation of tensions around her. Her book lies open in her lap, but her attention focuses entirely on Victoria's performance with the kind of detached interest typically reserved for watching amateur theater production. "What specific irregularities?" Naomi asks, her voice maintaining its calm tone despite the increasingly public nature of the confrontation. "The type that require comprehensive investigation by trained security professionals," Victoria responds with deliberate vagueness, clearly enjoying the power dynamics of withholding information from someone she considers beneath her station. "But that's unfortunately not our only concern at this point in the investigation." She pauses dramatically, allowing the weight of her next revelation to build suspense among the watching guests who have now abandoned any pretense of engaging in their own activities. The pool deck has transformed into an impromptu theater, with Victoria as the starring performer, and Naomi as the unwilling subject of her dramatic production. "We've received a serious report about a missing Cartier watch from the women's changing room," Victoria continues, her voice rising with each word. "A very expensive piece, worth approximately $15,000, that disappeared sometime during the past 2 hours. The accusation explodes across the pool area like a bomb, sending shockwaves through the gathered crowd and transforming curious observers into a hostile jury. Conversations stop entirely as every eye turns toward Naomi, measuring her response to this devastating allegation that threatens to transform a simple membership verification into a criminal investigation. Naomi's composure shows its first real crack as she processes the implications of Victoria's words. She stands slowly, her movements deliberate and controlled. But her book falls forgotten to the chair beside her with a soft thud that seems to echo across the suddenly silent deck. "Are you seriously suggesting that I stole someone's watch?" Naomi asks, her voice carrying a dangerous edge that suggests Victoria might be pushing boundaries she doesn't fully understand. "I'm not suggesting anything specific," Victoria replies with false innocence, clearly relishing her position of apparent authority. "I'm simply following established resort protocols for ensuring the safety and security of all our valued guests. That means we need to conduct a thorough search of your personal belongings to rule out any possibility of theft or unauthorized possession of resort property." Jake Morrison steps forward with obvious intent, his considerable bulk creating an intimidating shadow that falls across Naomi's position like a threat made manifest. His hand moves to his radio, in a gesture clearly designed to communicate his readiness to summon additional backup if Naomi refuses to cooperate with their increasingly aggressive demands. "You have absolutely no legal right to search my personal property," Naomi states firmly, her voice carrying the unmistakable authority of someone who understands exactly what rights she possesses and how far she's willing to go to defend them. Victoria's smile becomes predatory, revealing the extent of her confidence in the power she believes she wields. Actually, as the senior manager currently on duty and the direct representative of this resort's ownership, I have every legal right to protect our guests and our valuable property. You can cooperate voluntarily and make this process pleasant for everyone involved, or we can escalate this situation and involve local law enforcement to conduct a more formal and invasive search. The threat settles over the pool area like a suffocating blanket, transforming what had been a pleasant afternoon into something far more sinister and threatening. Several guests begin gathering their belongings with obvious discomfort, unwilling to witness what feels increasingly like a public shaming, designed to destroy someone's reputation and dignity. Others remain glued to their seats, transfixed by the unfolding drama and perhaps secretly grateful that they're not the ones being subjected to this kind of aggressive scrutiny. Their silence speaks volumes about the complicity that allows such behavior to continue unchecked in spaces that pride themselves on exclusivity and superior service. Emma stands near the pool house entrance, her face pale with distress as she watches the situation spiral beyond any reasonable bounds. Her hands shake slightly as she grips her clipboard, torn between her job security and her conscience, knowing that speaking up could cost her the employment she desperately needs, but finding it increasingly difficult to remain silent in the face of such obvious injustice. "This is completely unnecessary and inappropriate," Naomi says, her voice tight with controlled anger that threatens to break through her carefully maintained composure. "I've done absolutely nothing wrong, and you have no legitimate evidence to support these serious accusations you're making." "The evidence," Victoria counters smoothly, clearly prepared for this response, "is that you attempted to use suspicious membership credentials to gain unauthorized access to exclusive facilities reserved for verified members only. Combined with the convenient timing of the reported theft, we have every reasonable cause to be concerned about your presence here and your possible involvement in criminal activity." Naomi reaches for her beach bag, her movements deliberate and controlled despite the humiliation of the moment and the watching eyes of dozens of strangers who are witnessing her public degradation. "Fine, search my bag if you insist. But I want multiple witnesses to confirm that you're conducting this search without probable cause and in direct violation of basic guest services protocols and common decency." Victoria's eyes gleam with triumph as she accepts the bag, making an elaborate show of examining each item with the kind of theatrical thoroughness typically reserved for evidence processing in criminal investigations. She pulls out Naomi's sunscreen, her well-worn book, her leather wallet, and her expensive smartphone, laying each object on a nearby table as if cataloging evidence that will soon be presented in a court of law. The other guests watch in fascination and growing horror as the search continues, some pulling out their phones to record this unprecedented scene of a guest being treated like a common criminal in broad daylight at a resort that charges premium prices for the promise of respectful, dignified service. Victoria continues her theatrical search with the dedication of someone who genuinely believes she's performing a crucial public service for the safety and security of everyone present. She examines Naomi's wallet with particular interest, flipping through credit cards and identification documents with barely concealed disappointment at finding nothing that could be construed as incriminating evidence. The leather wallet reveals platinum credit cards from exclusive banks, a driver's license from an upscale neighborhood, and business cards from luxury hotels around the world. Hardly the profile of someone desperate enough to steal jewelry from changing rooms. But Victoria persists in her examination, determined to find something that will justify the escalating aggression of her approach. "Let me contact our head of security immediately," Victoria announces, pulling out her phone with exaggerated urgency that suggests she's dealing with a matter of national importance. Her voice carries across the pool area with crystal clarity, ensuring that every guest within hearing distance understands the gravity of the situation she's addressing. "This is Victoria Sterling, Senior Pool Manager. she says loudly into her phone, her words carefully chosen for maximum impact on her audience. I need immediate assistance with a potential theft situation at the VIP pool area. Yes, it's extremely urgent and may require additional personnel and possibly law enforcement involvement. Naomi stands motionless beside her chair, her jaw clenched as she endures this public spectacle with remarkable self-control. Her eyes sweep across the faces of the watching guests, cataloging their reactions and noting which ones seem disgusted by Victoria's behavior and which ones appear to approve of these aggressive tactics. The division in the crowd reflects deeper societal fractures that Naomi has spent her entire career trying to heal through her vision of inclusive hospitality. Some guests shift uncomfortably in their chairs, recognizing the injustice unfolding before them, while others exchange knowing glances that speak volumes about their own prejudices and assumptions about who belongs in exclusive spaces. You know what I find particularly interesting? Victoria continues, speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear while pretending to address Jake Morrison in a private conversation. Her voice drips with false concern and barely concealed contempt. Some people think they can walk into places like this and just blend in seamlessly. Like nobody will notice they don't actually belong here. The comment hits the assembled crowd like an electric shock, sending ripples of discomfort through guests who suddenly realize they're witnessing something far uglier than a simple security check. Several individuals shift uncomfortably in their loungers, while others exchange glances that reveal their own complicity in the systems that enable such behavior. Emma Rodriguez takes a tentative step forward from her position near the pool house, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment at being forced to witness her employer's discriminatory behavior. Her hands tremble slightly as she struggles with the decision to intervene, knowing that speaking up could cost her the job she desperately needs to support her family. Ms. Sterling, Emma calls out, her voice trembling but determined to inject some sanity into the rapidly deteriorating situation. Maybe we should handle this more privately, away from the other guests. Employee Rodriguez, Victoria snaps without turning around, her tone sharp enough to cut through steel and cold enough to freeze water. Return to your assigned duties immediately. This situation doesn't concern you, and your input is neither requested nor appropriate. Emma hesitates for a moment, caught between her job security and her conscience, her moral compass pulling her in one direction while her economic necessity pushes her in another. She reluctantly steps back, but remains within sight, her presence serving as a small comfort to Naomi in an increasingly hostile environment. Jake Morrison adjusts his position to become more physically intimidating, his considerable bulk serving as a silent but unmistakable reminder of the power dynamics at play. His radio crackles with static as he tests the connection, preparing for whatever escalation Victoria might demand from the situation. I've worked at this resort for 8 long years, Victoria continues, her voice rising with righteous indignation that seems to feed on the attention of her captive audience. 8 years of maintaining the highest possible standards of service and exclusivity that our valued members expect and deserve. I know exactly what kind of clientele belongs in a place like this, and I can spot troublemakers and potential problems from a mile away. Naomi finally breaks her silence, her voice cutting through Victoria's monologue with surgical precision that immediately shifts the dynamic of the confrontation. And what exactly makes someone a troublemaker, in your professional opinion, Ms. Sterling? Victoria pauses, suddenly realizing she's walked into dangerous territory, but too committed to her performance and too confident in her position to back down gracefully. Her mouth opens and closes several times as she searches for words that will sound professional rather than prejudiced. People who attempt to access areas they haven't properly paid for. She finally responds, her voice less confident than before. People who use questionable identification documents. People who become aggressive when asked legitimate security questions. People who... She gestures vaguely at Naomi, letting the implication hang in the air without stating it explicitly. People who look like me? Naomi completes the thought that Victoria lacks the courage to voice directly, her words carrying the weight of countless similar encounters throughout her life. The pool area falls into absolute silence, so complete that even the gentle lapping of water against the pool tiles seems to quiet in response to the tension. Victoria's face flushes red as she realizes her carefully maintained facade of professional concern has slipped to reveal the ugly prejudice lurking underneath. I never said anything specific about how you look, Victoria stammers defensively, but her tone betrays her guilt, and her words ring hollow to everyone present. This is purely about established security protocols and proper membership verification procedures. Security protocols that, apparently, don't apply to anyone else here, Naomi observes with devastating accuracy, gesturing toward the other guests who had entered and used the facilities throughout the afternoon, without any verification whatsoever. Victoria's composure continues to crack under the pressure of logical scrutiny. Those are established members with long histories at this resort, regular guests who've been coming here for years. We know them personally. And you don't know me because? Naomi asks, her question hanging in the air like a challenge that forces Victoria to confront the logical holes in her argument. Victoria's mouth opens and closes several times as she searches desperately for a response that won't expose her true motivations to the watching crowd. The silence stretches uncomfortably as everyone waits for her to provide some rational explanation for the disparate treatment. Because, Victoria finally explodes, her voice rising to near-shouting levels that echo across the water. People like you always try to game the system, always looking for ways to get something for nothing, always playing the victim card when you get caught breaking the rules. The words detonate across the pool area like grenades, destroying any remaining pretense of professional conduct and revealing the raw hatred that has been driving Victoria's behavior from the beginning. Several guests gasp audibly at the naked racism of her outburst, while others quickly gather their belongings and retreat from the toxic atmosphere. Naomi stands perfectly still, absorbing the full impact of Victoria's venom while maintaining her composure with what seems like superhuman effort. Her hands clench and unclench at her sides, the only visible sign of her internal struggle to remain calm in the face of such blatant hostility. There it is, Naomi says quietly, her voice carrying despite its low volume because of the absolute silence that has fallen over the area. The truth you've been trying to hide behind policies and procedures and professional concerns. Victoria realizes she's gone too far, but her pride and her investment in the confrontation prevent her from backing down gracefully. I'm doing my job exactly as I'm supposed to. I'm protecting this resort and its legitimate guests from people who don't belong here and shouldn't be here. And who gets to decide who belongs? Naomi asks, her question cutting to the heart of the matter. I do, Victoria declares with absolute certainty, her voice carrying the conviction of someone who believes she's been granted divine authority over the situation. As the senior manager and the owner's direct representative, I make those decisions every single day. Naomi nods slowly, as if Victoria has just confirmed something very important that will soon become relevant in ways the manager cannot possibly imagine. The owner's representative. That's very interesting. Tell me, what do you think the owner would say about your performance here today? Victoria's laugh is sharp and bitter, filled with the confidence of someone who believes she's untouchable. The owner will thank me personally for maintaining standards and protecting the resort's reputation. He trusts me completely to handle situations exactly like this one. He trusts you? Naomi repeats, her tone suggesting that Victoria might want to reconsider that assumption very carefully. Absolutely. Mr. Chen has complete confidence in my abilities and my judgment, Victoria states with unwavering conviction, completely unaware that she's just made a critical error that will soon reshape everything she thinks she knows about power, privilege, and the consequences of unchecked prejudice. The sound of expensive dress shoes slapping rapidly against marble echoes across the pool deck like gunshots as David Kim bursts through the entrance doors, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled from his frantic sprint across the resort property. His $3,000 suit is wrinkled, and his meticulously styled hair shows signs of the panic that drove him to abandon a crucial board meeting the moment he received the emergency alert about the situation unfolding at the VIP pool. His face displays a mixture of absolute panic and growing disbelief as he takes in the scene before him. Victoria, standing triumphant over what she clearly believes to be her greatest professional victory. Jake Morrison looming nearby like a threatening shadow, and Naomi Chen sitting calmly in the center of what has become a public circus of discrimination and humiliation. "Miss Sterling!" David's voice cuts through the tension like a knife through silk, his words carrying an authority that immediately shifts the power dynamics of the entire situation. What in God's name is happening here? Victoria turns toward him with obvious relief flooding her features, clearly expecting support and validation from another member of the resort's management team. Her smile radiates confidence as she prepares to receive the praise she believes she's earned through her handling of this challenging situation. "Mr. Kim, perfect timing," she says with obvious satisfaction. "I've been successfully handling a complex security situation involving an unauthorized guest attempting to use fraudulent credentials and a potential theft investigation. I've got absolutely everything under complete control." David's eyes dart frantically between Victoria and Naomi, his expression growing more horrified with each passing second as the full magnitude of the disaster begins to penetrate his consciousness. He recognizes Naomi immediately, having worked closely with her for the past 3 years as her vice president of operations and trusted confidant in building the Oceanview Paradise brand. The color drains from his face like water from a broken dam as he realizes the catastrophic nature of what has unfolded in his absence. His hands begin to tremble slightly as he processes the implications of Victoria's actions and the potential damage to everything they've worked to build. "Under control?" David's voice cracks with stress and disbelief. "Miss Sterling, do you have any idea whatsoever who you're talking to?" Victoria straightens her shoulders with obvious pride, clearly believing that David's question is setting up an opportunity for her to demonstrate her professional competence and attention to detail. A woman who attempted to use fraudulent credentials to gain unauthorized access to VIP facilities and who became increasingly aggressive when questioned about a serious theft report. "I followed every single protocol in our security manual." David looks like he might collapse from shock. His legs seem unsteady as he approaches Naomi with obvious deference and respect, his hands trembling as he prepares to address her with the reverence she deserves, but has been denied for the past 2 hours. "Ms. Chen," he begins, his voice filled with genuine anguish and professional horror. "I am so incredibly sorry for everything that has happened here today. I had absolutely no idea you were planning to visit the property, and if I had known, I would have ensured you received the royal treatment you deserve." "Miss Chen," Victoria interrupts, confusion beginning to creep into her voice as she senses that something fundamental has shifted in the dynamics around her. "Who exactly is Ms. Chen? I don't understand what's happening here." David turns back to Victoria with an expression of complete incredulity, as if he's looking at someone who has just announced that the sky is purple and water flows uphill. His voice carries the weight of someone delivering news that will reshape everything the listener believes about reality. "This is Naomi Chen," he says slowly and clearly, ensuring that every word penetrates Victoria's consciousness. She's the founder, owner, and chief executive officer of Oceanview Paradise Corporation. She owns this resort, Ms. Sterling. She owns the entire chain of properties. She owns everything you see around you, including your job. The words hit Victoria like a physical blow, causing her to stagger backward against a nearby table. Her mouth falls open in shock as the full implications of David's revelation begin to cascade through her mind like dominoes falling in an elaborate pattern of destruction. Jake Morrison takes an involuntary step backward, his hand falling away from his radio as he realizes the catastrophic nature of their mistake and begins calculating how quickly he can distance himself from Victoria's sinking ship. "That's completely impossible," Victoria whispers, shaking her head in absolute denial. "The CEO is a man, Mr. Chen. I've been working for Mr. Chen for 8 years. I receive emails from his office. I've seen his signature on documents. Ms. Chen," David corrects with firm emphasis, his voice carrying the patience of someone explaining basic facts to a child. "Naomi Chen. She built this company from absolutely nothing, starting with a single property and growing it into an international hospitality empire. She's been your ultimate boss since the very first day you were hired, whether you realized it or not." Emma Rodriguez covers her mouth with both hands, her eyes wide with shock and a growing sense of vindication, as the pieces of Naomi's earlier calm confidence suddenly click into place with perfect clarity. Victoria's legs give out beneath her as she stumbles against the table, her voice becoming shrill with panic and desperate denial. "But she never told me who she was. She never identified herself. How was I supposed to know? If she had just said something from the beginning, none of this would have happened." Naomi stands slowly, her entire demeanor shifting like a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis, as she steps fully into her role as the ultimate authority figure in this situation. When she speaks, her voice carries the quiet power of someone who has built an empire through determination, vision, and an unwavering commitment to treating all people with dignity and respect. "Miss Sterling," Naomi begins, her words measured and deliberate, carrying the weight of someone who has earned the right to reshape lives with her decisions. "The question isn't why I didn't identify myself. The question is why you felt entitled to treat any human being the way you've treated me today, regardless of their title, their wealth, or their position in society." David pulls out his phone, frantically scrolling through emergency contact numbers with the desperation of someone trying to contain a nuclear disaster. "Miss Chen, please tell me what I can do to fix this situation. How do we make this right? What can we possibly do to repair the damage?" Naomi raises her hand to stop him, her gesture carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "David, I think this situation has been extraordinarily educational for everyone involved. I've learned more about our actual company culture in the past 2 hours than I have in months of sanitized reports and carefully prepared presentations." Victoria drops to her knees on the pool deck, her carefully maintained composure completely shattered like glass hitting concrete. Tears stream down her face as she realizes the magnitude of her fall from grace and the complete destruction of everything she's worked to build. "Please, Miss Chen," she sobs, her voice breaking with desperation. "I didn't know who you were. If you had just told me from the beginning, none of this would have happened. I would have treated you like royalty." "Exactly," Naomi replies, with cold precision that cuts deeper than any shouting could. "If I had told you who I was, you would have treated me with respect because of my title and my wealth, but your default mode was to assume I didn't belong here based solely on my appearance and your prejudiced assumptions. That tells me everything I need to know about your character and your fundamental fitness for any leadership role in my company." The gathered guests begin to murmur among themselves with growing excitement, some pulling out phones to record what has become an extraordinary reversal of fortune that will soon be shared across social media platforms around the world. The woman they had watched being humiliated and degraded just moments before now stands revealed as the most powerful person present. And the symmetry of the situation is lost on no one. Victoria remains on her knees beside the pristine pool, her designer blazer now soaked with tears and splashed with chlorinated water that seems to represent the complete dissolution of her carefully constructed professional image. The woman who had wielded her authority so carelessly just minutes before now looks like a broken marionette whose strings have been cut by an uncaring puppeteer. "Please, I'm begging you," Victoria sobs, reaching toward Naomi with desperate hands that shake with the terror of someone watching their entire life crumble in real time. "I'll do absolutely anything to fix this situation. I'll apologize publicly to everyone here. I'll take comprehensive sensitivity training. I'll work without pay until I've somehow made up for what I did. Just please don't destroy my entire life over one terrible mistake." Naomi's expression remains unmoved by the dramatic display of remorse, her face showing the kind of steely resolve that comes from someone who has faced injustice too many times to be swayed by convenient tears. "One mistake?" "Miss Sterling, according to our detailed records, this is the 23rd formal complaint about discriminatory behavior filed against you in just the past 2 years alone." David nods grimly as he scrolls through his tablet, his face growing darker with each piece of evidence he uncovers. "We have comprehensive documentation of complaints from guests representing various ethnicities, sexual orientations, religious backgrounds, and economic circumstances. The pattern is absolutely clear and consistently troubling." Victoria's face goes white as fresh snow as she realizes the extent of the evidence that has been quietly accumulating against her over the years. Her voice becomes barely a whisper as the weight of her actions finally begins to sink in. "Those complaints were all misunderstandings. People being overly sensitive about perfectly reasonable security measures. I was just maintaining the high standards that make this place special." "Standards," Naomi repeats, her voice dripping with contempt that cuts through Victoria's excuses like acid through paper. "Like telling a black woman that she would contaminate the water by swimming in it." The watching guests gasp audibly at this revelation, their shock rippling through the crowd like waves as several of them begin recording the confrontation on their phones. The viral potential of the moment is lost on no one present, especially Victoria, who suddenly realizes that her humiliation will extend far beyond this poolside gathering to potentially millions of viewers around the world. "I never used those exact words," Victoria protests weakly, but her objection lacks conviction, even to her own ears, as she realizes how hollow her defense sounds in the face of her obvious guilt. Emma Rodriguez steps forward from her position near the pool house, her voice stronger now that the truth has been revealed, and the power dynamics have shifted completely. "Ms. Chen, I can provide detailed written testimony about multiple incidents I've personally witnessed over the past year. Ms. Sterling specifically instructed me to never question white guests about their credentials or reservations, but to always demand extensive verification from guests of color, regardless of their obvious wealth or status." Victoria spins toward Emma with fury blazing in her eyes, her mask of professional courtesy finally dropping completely to reveal the ugly hatred underneath. "You ungrateful little bitch. I gave you a job when no one else in this industry would even consider hiring you. I protected you from budget cuts. This is how you repay my kindness and mentorship?" Jake Morrison, who has remained silent during the revelation while calculating his own survival prospects, finally speaks up in a desperate attempt to save his own career. "Look, I want everyone to understand that I was just following direct orders from Ms. Sterling. She told me this lady was causing trouble and needed to be intimidated, so I backed her up. I had no idea who she really was or what the real situation involved." Naomi turns her attention to Jake with the same cold assessment she had directed at Victoria, her gaze measuring him like a scientist studying an interesting but ultimately disappointing specimen. "Mr. Morrison, ignorance is not an acceptable excuse for intimidation and harassment. Your job as security personnel is to protect all guests equally and fairly, not to serve as muscle for a racist manager who abuses her authority." "I'm not racist," Victoria screams, her voice echoing across the water with the desperate intensity of someone whose entire worldview is collapsing around them. "I treat everyone fairly. I just maintain appropriately high standards for an exclusive resort that caters to sophisticated clientele. High standards that mysteriously only seem to apply to people who look like me, Naomi observes with devastating accuracy. Tell me, Ms. Sterling, what exactly did you mean earlier when you said that people like me always try to game the system? Victoria's mouth opens and closes soundlessly as she realizes the trap she's walked into with her own words. Every response she might offer will either be an obvious lie or a damning admission of the prejudice that has driven her behavior throughout this entire confrontation. David checks his watch and addresses Naomi with professional efficiency, clearly eager to begin damage control procedures. Security has been notified about the situation, and we have HR staff preparing comprehensive termination paperwork for both Ms. Sterling and Mr. Morrison. Should we escort them from the property immediately, or would you prefer to handle this differently? Wait, Naomi says, holding up her hand in a gesture that immediately stops all movement around the pool. Before we proceed with any terminations, I want to hear Ms. Sterling explain her behavior to our guests. I think they deserve to understand exactly what kind of values she represents, and what she really thinks about the people who visit our properties. Victoria scrambles to her feet, her legs shaky and unsteady as she realizes that her humiliation is far from over. You can't force me to humiliate myself in front of everyone like this. I have rights as an employee. There are laws against this kind of public shaming. The same rights I had when you accused me of theft in front of all these witnesses? Naomi asks pointedly, her words carrying the sharp edge of perfect irony. The same dignity you afforded me when you suggested I didn't belong in a place I actually own. The irony is lost on no one present, and several guests nod in approval at Naomi's pointed response, while others shift uncomfortably as they remember their own silence during Victoria's earlier performance of hatred and discrimination. This is going to be all over social media within hours, Victoria realizes with growing horror as she notices the phones pointed in her direction. My name, my face, everything I've said and done here today. I'll never work in the hospitality industry again. My entire career will be completely destroyed. Naomi's expression softens slightly, but her resolve remains absolutely firm as she delivers what amounts to a final judgment on Victoria's professional future. Ms. Sterling, that's the natural consequence of the choices you've made today, and apparently for years before today. When you decided to abuse your authority and indulge your prejudices at the expense of innocent people, you set these events in motion. I'm simply ensuring that your actions have appropriate and proportionate consequences. Victoria makes one final, desperate attempt to salvage something from the complete wreckage of her career and reputation. I'll sue you for wrongful termination, for public humiliation, for defamation of character. You can't just destroy someone's life like this. Naomi's laugh is genuinely amused, the sound carrying across the pool like music to the ears of everyone who has witnessed Victoria's systematic cruelty. Please do pursue legal action. I would absolutely welcome the opportunity to present all 23 discrimination complaints in court, along with today's comprehensive security footage and extensive witness testimony. I'm quite confident that my legal team would enjoy that case very much. The fight goes out of Victoria completely as she realizes the hopelessness of her position and the futility of any further resistance. Security officers appear at the pool entrance, ready to escort both terminated employees from the premises under the watchful eyes of guests, who will undoubtedly share this story far beyond the confines of Oceanview Paradise Resort. Naomi finally lowers herself into the crystal-clear water of the VIP pool, the coolness providing a welcome relief after the intensity and emotional exhaustion of the prolonged confrontation. The water embraces her like a long-awaited friend, unmarked and unchanged by her presence, despite Victoria's ugly predictions about contamination and degradation. Around the pool deck, the remaining guests watch with a mixture of awe and newfound respect, as the woman they had seen systematically humiliated just 2 hours earlier claims her rightful place in the space she had envisioned, designed and created through years of dedicated work and unwavering commitment to inclusive hospitality. Emma approaches the pool's edge tentatively, still processing the extraordinary reversal of fortune she has witnessed, and her own small but significant role in supporting justice when it mattered most. "Miss Chen, I have to ask you something that's been bothering me. Why didn't you just tell them who you were from the very beginning? You could have avoided this entire horrible ordeal." Naomi floats peacefully on her back, gazing up at the cloudless sky above, while her mind processes the events of the afternoon and their broader implications for her company and the hospitality industry as a whole. "Emma, when people know who I am, they treat me well because of my title and my wealth and the power I represent. But how they treat Naomi, the regular customer, tells me who they really are deep inside their hearts. It reveals their true character when they think there won't be any consequences for their actions." David joins the conversation from his position near the pool house, his tablet finally set aside as the immediate crisis management phase concludes and the longer-term implications begin to take shape. The board of directors is going to demand a comprehensive report on this incident within 24 hours. How should I frame our response strategy and our plans for preventing similar situations? "There's no complex strategy needed here," Naomi replies with the calm certainty of someone who has built her success on fundamental principles of fairness and human dignity. "We're going to be completely transparent about everything that happened here today. We're going to acknowledge publicly that we failed to properly train and supervise our staff. And we're going to implement comprehensive, systemic changes to ensure this never happens again to anyone." The middle-aged guest who had witnessed the entire confrontation from beginning to end approaches hesitantly, his expression showing a mixture of shame and determination that suggests he's wrestling with his own conscience. "Miss Chen, I just wanted to say that I'm deeply ashamed that I didn't speak up earlier, when I could clearly see what was happening. I should have said something to support you, but I chose comfort over courage." Naomi's expression softens with understanding and forgiveness, recognizing the internal struggle that many well-meaning people face when confronted with injustice in real time. The fact that you recognize that now and are willing to acknowledge it publicly is what matters most. Real change starts with individual awareness and the courage to act on that awareness when it counts. Emma nods thoughtfully, her mind already working on ways to be part of the solution rather than a passive observer of problems. "What specific kinds of changes are you planning to implement across all the properties?" "Comprehensive and mandatory bias training for every single staff member from housekeeping to senior management," Naomi begins, counting the initiatives on her fingers as she outlines her vision for systemic reform. "Anonymous reporting systems for discrimination complaints that bypass local management entirely, regular mystery shopping programs to test our actual practices versus our stated policies, and most importantly, leadership accountability at every single level of the organization." David makes detailed notes on his tablet as Naomi outlines her comprehensive reform agenda, clearly eager to begin implementation as quickly as possible. "How quickly do you want these changes rolled out across all properties in the chain?" "I wanted them implemented yesterday," Naomi replies without a moment's hesitation. "But since we can't change the past, we'll start first thing tomorrow morning. Every single day we delay is another day that someone else might experience what I experienced today, and that's completely unacceptable." The pool area has transformed completely from the toxic environment of 2 hours earlier. Guests who had remained to witness the dramatic conclusion now seem genuinely interested in the ongoing conversation about positive change and corporate responsibility. Several approach to share their own experiences with discrimination and to express enthusiastic support for Naomi's ambitious reform initiatives. "Mrs. Chen," Emma says quietly, her voice filled with determination and hope, "I want to help with these changes in whatever way I can. Whatever you need me to do to make sure this never happens to anyone else, anywhere in your organization." Naomi smiles warmly at the young woman whose courage had provided the only bright spot in an otherwise dark and troubling situation. Emma, you already helped tremendously by being willing to stand up for what was right, when it would have been much easier and safer to stay silent. That's exactly the kind of moral leadership we need more of throughout our organization. As the afternoon sun begins to set over Oceanview Paradise Resort, casting golden reflections across the water, Naomi continues to float peacefully in the pool that Victoria had claimed she would contaminate. The irony is not lost on anyone present that the water has never been cleaner or more welcoming than it is at this moment, reflecting not just the sky above, but the possibility of a more just and equitable future for everyone who enters these spaces seeking rest, relaxation, and basic human dignity. The video footage of Victoria's spectacular downfall spreads across social media platforms like wildfire, tagged with hashtags like Karma is Real, CEO Reveal, Justice Served, and Poolside Justice. Within just 6 hours, over 3 million people have watched the extraordinary moment when prejudice met its match in the most unexpected and satisfying way possible. Comments pour in from viewers around the world, sharing their own stories of discrimination while celebrating this rare instance of immediate and proportionate consequences for racist behavior. The video becomes a catalyst for broader conversations about systemic bias in the hospitality industry and the courage required to stand up for justice when it matters most. But Naomi's story resonates far beyond the simple satisfaction of watching a bully receive their comeuppance. In coffee shops and office break rooms around the world, people begin discussing their own experiences with prejudice and bias, sharing stories that had been buried for years under layers of shame and resignation. Some viewers share painful memories of times they remained silent when they should have spoken up for others, while others find newfound courage to report discrimination they had previously endured in silence, inspired by Emma's example of moral courage in the face of potential consequences. The real power of Naomi's revelation lies not in her impressive wealth or corporate title, but in the fundamental reminder that dignity and respect should never depend on someone's bank account, business card, or social status. Every human being deserves to be treated with basic decency, whether they're the CEO or the janitor, the guest or the staff member, the insider or the outsider. Emma Rodriguez becomes something of a hero in her own right, representing the transformative power of individual courage when faced with systemic injustice. Her willingness to support Naomi despite the potential consequences for her own job security demonstrates that ordinary people can make extraordinary differences when they choose conscience over convenience and justice over job security. The next time you witness someone being treated unfairly because of their race, gender, appearance, accent, or any other factor beyond their control, will you channel Emma's courage, or will you be one of the silent bystanders who chose comfort over justice? Will you have the moral strength to speak up when speaking up matters most, even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient? And remember, in a world where appearances can deceive and assumptions can destroy careers overnight, the person you're dismissing, disrespecting, or underestimating might just be the one individual with the power to change your life forever in ways you never imagined possible. Sometimes the most powerful and influential people in any room are the ones who choose to dress down rather than show off their status, who prefer to observe rather than announce their presence, who test the true character of others by experiencing life from a different perspective. After all, you never really know who's swimming in the pool right next to you.